Bonjour mes amis, il est 10 heures à Redmond. C'est l'heure de .NET API Review. Uh, we have a scroll bar today, but I think we're only going to talk about 3 issues and then call it an early day so we can focus on getting .NET 10 out the door. First up, .NET Runtime 118179 extension marker name attribute. Julian, bonjour.
Hi, good morning. Um, all right, so a little bit of background on this one. So as part of .NET 10, C#14, we're shipping extension everything feature, which includes methods, properties, operators. Um, some other types of members didn't make it into C#14, but will likely reconsider or take another look in future releases. Um, we made a significant change to the meta design. Um, we decided on it maybe a month ago, and we implemented it over the last couple of weeks, um, based on feedback from like BCL and tools, and basically understanding um, the handling of public APIs. But long story short, the new codegen involves an extension, an attribute, like the compiler is known to do. Um, the attribute is synthesized by the compiler, so it is not required to be there. When we need to use it and we see it's not there, we'll just produce it.
Sorry,
But
Julian. Jeremy, could you share your screen to Teams?
Oh,
oh, I'm sorry, I can share.
no, no,
No,
no.
no. Jeremy usually does. He just.
Yeah,
Oh,
Oh, sure. Okay.
I
Sorry about that.
failed to notice that I didn't have a giant red border around the screen.
Um,
thanks.
so the compiler does generate the attributes when it's missing, but that does mean we expect extensions to exist in lots of assemblies, and that means we're producing the same type over and over. So it's good to have a single implementation and just share the bits rather than duplicate the bits. Um, The only thing stored in the attributes is a string. Uh, if you look at the link spec, we'll look at the example below, but we're not going to go into the detail spec. It's a little bit complicated for the purpose here, unless there are specific questions. But basically, it allows us to associate uh, an implementation method back to a specific marker type. The marker type encodes the details of the type parameters, its constraints, and the extension parameter for an extension. So if we look at this example, we have method m. It's an extension of int. So what we emit, if you look at the very bottom there, you see implementation method. That is a static method. It has additional type parameters. Because the original was a static method. Oh,
It's called
down
cat
there.
scroll.
Thank you. Because the original is static, we lost video.
Yep.
The implementation method does not get an extra parameter. So when the compiler reloads this metadata, we need to somehow recover that there was an extension block and that this method belongs to it. So everything that's above here is the metadata to make that possible, make that round tripping possible. So there's an extension type, extension grouping type. That's the class. It has an unspeakable name. It's generic with like T0. That's at the very top of the screen. It has the old extension attribute. then we have a marker type. This one is also generic. It has the correct, it redeclares the type parameter. It has the correct type parameter name. It has the full constraints. Then we have a marker method that encodes all the details about the extension parameter. Then if you skip below, there's the actual extension method. So this is a method that has a throw null body. The final implementation will have throw not supported exception, but this has the original signature of the method that you had in source. But somehow we need to know that this extension method belongs to a specific extension block, and there's the attribute in question, encodes the name of the marker type, which, as I said before, has all the details about the type parameters, and the marker method is unique in there, so it encodes all the information about the extension parameter. Sorry, so that was kind of long-winded, but that's a little bit complicated to explain. You are not allowed to use this attribute directly in source. By the C# compiler will not let you. Of course, you're still allowed to use it in other languages or in IL. So we can't fully disallow, like prevent it in the ecosystem. So the compiler deals with whenever it sees it in unexpected places. There are two things I think aside from the core design of the metadata, which was reviewed with various runtime, BCL folks, and LDM, on the attribute itself, the only things I think I wanted to bring up are just confirming that we do indeed prefer property to a field for the name.
Yep.
And the second question that there might be a little bit of maybe controversy, or it's not obvious, is the list of attribute targets. So the current list of attribute targets was selected. Basically, for this release, we need methods and properties. Without those, we lose the benefits. We're actually shipping those features in .NET 10. All the other attribute targets that are there are the ones that we think we may need in the future. So the attribute targets that are excluded are some that are clearly relevant, like assembly, module, parameter, return type. There's one that is excluded that is not 100% obvious. It's constructor. We are discussing and thinking about how to do extension constructors, but our conclusion at this point is they will likely not be implemented as actual constructors. They'll just be implemented as methods. The design is not like 100% locked in, so there's maybe a tiny bit of risk there, but I feel pretty comfortable. So anyway, so that's why this list of attribute targets is proposed. In the alternative section at the very bottom of the doc, I listed...
Wait, excuse me. Can you...
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Like, how would it work for, like, interfaces and delegates and stuff?
Yes. So for types, so there's a list of types: class, struct, enum, interface, and delegates. And the idea there is basically you would have an extension member that is a type. So the feature is you have an extended type and you say dot nested type, and that nested type is actually an extension. The compiler just decides to look up somewhere else and find it there. And so that feature is also not guaranteed that we'll end up doing it, but that's the purpose for including types. Did I answer your question? Yeah. Cool. So it is not to be confused with like extension interface, which was there's another feature that we actually tried to implement in .NET 9, where you add an interface to implementation to an existing type, and that feature basically is going to be something we'll revisit, see if there's still a solution, but we haven't done it. I love Jeremy's cat. So, okay, that's the context on the attribute targets. Let me look at the notes. Okay, another thing that's worth mentioning, in the metadata, if you put any other kinds of members like events, for example, or nested types or fields, in places where the C# 14 compiler does not expect them, we just ignore them. And that basically reserves our ability to add support for, let's say, extension static field in the future, or extension consts. Extension events are likely. Those are very similar to properties. So if there's a need, we can totally we can do that. And that's it for kind of the overview.
So I'm a little confused between you're adding the targets you need and the targets that are aspirational, like nested classes, interfaces, and delegates. But then you mentioned constructors as being aspirational, but they're not in your list.
Yes, constructors. We expect constructors, extension constructors, to be possible in the language, but in metadata they would not be emitted as actual constructors. They would be emitted as regular methods. So they would be under the attribute target.method, which is there.
Okay,
that's the trick.
That makes sense.
And remind me, if we were to only have it be like in .NET 10, if we only included method and property, then in .NET 11, we would be able to add the additional targets. But if someone wanted to use the C#, I guess, 15 compiler with .NET 10, they'd have to define their own internal extension marker name attribute with the right targets and deal with the ambiguous warnings. Is that right?
Yes, the one in source would always win, so there would not be an ambiguity, but that would be the workaround for that scenario.
And the downside to including the additional targets is either we never end up doing those and it's just this weird wart, or, well, actually, did you say that the compiler will throw if someone tries to use this explicitly?
Yes, you'll get a diagnostic. You get an error if you try to put it in source.
Right. Sorry. Yeah, an error diagnostic. So unless someone was doing this in IL or a different language, there'd be no concern about them using this on something else and kind of having them squat in some weird way.
That's correct. Also, the attribute is in the compiler services namespace, which is reserved for those kind of attributes.
Right. It seems fine to, if we think we're going to get to all these, it seems fine to include them.
Yeah, I'm also thinking the other extreme is, like, why not just say all and then just not care? If you're not allowed to explicitly use it and you're not allowed, or yeah, if you're not allowed to explicitly use it, then why not just say all? I guess so it doesn't confuse people writing F#.
Yeah, the reason I prefer not to put all, some of the attribute targets like assembly, module, parameter, return type, they type parameter, they really made no sense at all to put the attribute there. So that's the only reason. Yeah.
Fair enough. So what's the value of name? I can't read
Okay.
property. That doesn't. At least it's not a
if you look at the
string I can
comments that's
recognize.
above that line that you're highlighting, the attribute encodes marker. Sorry, bottom of your screen.
So that okay.
There
so
you go. That's literally the.
so this block
the name of,
is the name
yeah,
of this unspeakable
Yes.
type.
Exactly.
Okay.
The actual name is a hash of all the basically important elements as far as the C# is concerned. The name will change if you change, say, the type parameter names. If you change the signature of your extension. Then the
Why
name will
why do we use name rather than type?
You're saying system.type.
Yeah.
We could also.
Is there a
Because the only thing you're going to use it for is to load the type ref. So why not just put it in the
Yep.
type ref loading map?
That is possible.
I mean, again, I don't know that we don't expect anyone to write this themselves. So from that perspective, it doesn't matter. I would imagine some tools might consume this just like Roslyn will. And presumably it'd be easier for them to consume it if they had the type object. Otherwise, they would need to enumerate all types to find the one that had the right name.
Excuse me.
Or does Roslyn itself do something else with the name? What does it do with it, I guess?
Basically, we use this entire block to rehydrate the extension block that you have in source. So we need to be able to associate this signature, this static void method M, back into an extension of int, which is what the extension grouping and marker types encode above.
But like, does the name itself mean anything, or is the very first thing Roslyn have to do is find the type that has this
Yeah,
name?
we just find it, and it's just a link. We're just trying to reference the type,
mean,
so the type would work.
Does seem to be maybe a tight locality reference name, but it feels like if this was a type ref, it would be smaller because aren't type refs like int32s? So the value in the attribute would be like that long.
Is there any situation, Julian, where you would need to refer to a type that this assembly doesn't reference?
Okay, sorry, I was conversing with Jared for a minute. I think system type is possible. It is definitely a shipping risk to change the encoding at this point. If we'd need to have like I think a strong argument.
I don't have a strong argument. You're the primary consumer. I was just thinking in terms of like, it feels indirect to use the string unless there is benefit. Like I was asking if there are situations where you couldn't use a type because you actually needed to refer to a type that was in an assembly that you don't reference.
No, it's all going to be local. It's literally pointing like to a couple lines above within the same scope.
I see.
So okay, let me. I'll circle back with the working group.
Here's a suggestion. Let's approve two different versions of it, and you choose whichever one you can fit.
That sounds perfect. Yeah.
Okay. I would say with a preference on our side for the type if we can make it work, but
Yeah.
if
Okay.
not,
I mean,
fine
I
with
love
this
the suggestion. It is I mean, the whole thing is a late change, so I apologize for bringing this up late, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, for one, it'll be so it scopes it, and then for two, I'm pretty sure in the output assembly, like repeating this name over and over and over and over and over again, unless this actually gets to share from a string ref. I don't know how attributes are actually encoded in the IL. Sorry, in the DLL. But this feels like it's would be a very big space saving once this feature is used multiple times to use the type
Yep,
ref instead of the name.
That's fair point.
So the mid particles marker and name feel somewhat redundant to me and somewhat contradictory. Like marker
Okay,
feels like a thing that
so
you would put to say extensions live here, but name is you're actually saying where the target lives. So
okay, so the context, there are multiple. So I presented like a simple example of just a single extension block. When you have multiple extension blocks, they can be merged. That's why we ended up having two nested types. There's a grouping type and a marker type. So the marker here refers to, it's the name of the marker type, not the name of the grouping type.
okay, so it's not an extension marker name. It's an
It's the
extension.
name of the marker for an extension.
Yeah. Okay.
So we could probably just drop name, right? Just have it be extension marker attribute.
Yeah, because you're just saying
Yes.
who the target of where the mark lives, right? So you're saying who holds this attribute.
Sure.
I think.
Sorry,
I know,
you're
'cause
pointing
that's
at the
in-
wrong one. You're pointing at the wrong one, but
Yeah. Because
yes,
you're
we're
the
pointing at
type
this marker
inside the
type.
type that was marked as an extension type. Okay. So it's not who had extension attribute. It's what type represents that word.
Yes.
Okay.
If it was just called extension marker, then we could have it have both the string name and a type overload. And even if the language weren't able to make the change from string to type for .NET 10 due to timing issues, it could end up supporting both in .NET 11 so that we wouldn't have the bloat consideration.
That's where my mind was going as well, Tanner.
So would we try to load one from the other if the thing was hydrated, or would we make them both nullable?
I think we probably just make them both nullable. We could always get the name from the type, but we couldn't do the opposite.
Right.
Well, at least not in any reasonable manner.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is we could drop the name. We'd call this extension marker attributes. So that part I think is good. Having both a string and a type seems a little bit complicated. I think there should be last resort. Let me try and see. Basically, I need to circle back on the type approach, and if we can make it work, let's just
But
do
that's
that
fine.
one.
I think
it's
let's just change.
tight,
Let's just
but,
make the name smaller, and then say we prefer the type. But if we can't do the type, name is fine, string is fine, and let's just ensure we like whatever we would call each of them and call it a day.
And we do. Oh, do we prefer string to just presumably what we were doing before this, which is inlining it somewhere, like
String
we would
is-
do for download.net? What I'm just saying is, like, do we need to like commit to string if it's like a, if it's a time thing, like we don't have the resources? Do we need it in the SDK?
You mean the attribute at all?
Yeah, exactly. Like, because Roslyn can emit types. Like, if the idea is this saves space, but the string thing doesn't save as much space as we like, would it be better to wait till .NET 11 to do the thing we like?
It's a reasonable question.
Meaning we would only approve for addition the typed version, and if the compiler can't switch, they inject the synthetic one and have a compat
Potentially,
elephant?
yeah. Like, would that be better than approving both? Yeah.
I mean, I think Julie, correct me if I'm wrong. The compiler already needs to be able to inject the synthetic one because it might be targeting something other than .NET 10.
That's correct.
This attribute is purely to save space when targeting .NET 10 plus.
Yes.
And I think if the language, if we were to say only the type one, then it kind of forces the language to support the type one, but then the language still has to ultimately support both for back compat. So it's the same as supporting both.
Does it have to support both for back compat? Because it's
Well,
Yeah,
if
we need
if
to
it
be
ships
able to
one.
load metadata that was produced by.
old
If we
assemblies.
go that route,
Yeah.
the .NET compiler will produce,
Right.
encoding using string, and we'll have to support those forever.
Forever, yeah, because you can't rebuild everything, of course. Never mind. It was just a thought. I'm okay with approving either, or like approving both and seeing which one lands.
Okay.
Those boxes.
What I would do, I will come back if there's no more feedback. The things I took are definitely we're proposing to change the name of the attributes. Yep. We prefer to have the type version. We'll check with the working group and LDM on that. And the attribute targets, I didn't hear anyone really push back on that list.
Sounds good.
Correct.
To be clear, we're not ever going to have both constructors. We're just kind of approving either.
I understand.
That's the.
Oh, I'm just
Okay.
clarifying for myself. That's what
Oh,
we're saying.
and I think we should remove the nullable annotation on the name and the type there. I think if
Well,
we
that was for the. Do we just add it with both versions? So if we're clarifying on the or, then
Yeah, I think it's an either or, not
not a late bound either or.
yeah, exactly. XOR.
Thank you.
All right. So either string name or type, unless we have a better name for type, like marker type.
It would be marker type if we need to name it more specifically.
Well, for the string one, should we call it type name if that's what it is? Or target type name, or I don't know. It's probably fine.
Is it the assembly qualified name or just the name because it's expected to be in the same scope?
It's just the name, not the full name.
The container
So it
relative
does
name.
not have
yeah.
any. It does not have a slash or plus or dots or anything separating.
And then Chad asks, could it also instead be a generic attribute? But I think a generic attribute means we have to instantiate it in the runtime every time somebody talks about it, and we actually wouldn't want that.
It also means that it wouldn't work for Roslyn targeting down level.
Fair enough. All right. So we prefer the type version. Weak naming is fine because it's compiler services. So type and string name. And but we do recommend yoinking the word name out of the attribute.
Cool. Thank you.
Check. All right. Thank you, Julian. All right. Next up, even though you guys are tired of hearing of crypto things, .NET Runtime 118320, Composite ML-DSA. Pranav, did you want to take the lead on this one, or would you like me to?
Yep, I can do it.
Okay.
Okay, so Composite ML-DSA is a PQC, post-quantum crypto algorithm, similar to ML-DSA and SLH-DSA, which we approved a couple sessions ago. But this one combines a PQC algorithm with a traditional algorithm. So we kind of have to account for both API shapes. The traditional algorithms it has are ECDSA, RSA, and EDDSA. We don't have shapes for EDDSA, so it's really just RSA and ECDSA we need to conform to. So yeah, basically the keys are each one of the PQC, the MLDSA plus the traditional algorithm smashed together. Same thing for signatures. Yeah, so let's go through the shape. Composite MLDSA has the protected constructor like all of the other algorithms. There's an algorithm type which defines, we'll look at it later, but it defines a bunch of um, it lists which kind of algorithm from the spec that this composite MLDSA actually represents. And there's a property for it, which you can get based on what you said in the constructor. Is supported and is algorithm supported. So these, I know Kevin was questioning if we need both of these. Is supported basically says, is the composite MLDSA supported on this platform at all for any of the there's 18 different pairs, so are any of them supported? And then is algorithm supported for a specific one will tell you for whichever one of the 18 you selected, is that supported? So the question here was, do we need both of these? Yeah, and I'm not sure. I think we can maybe just go with one of them, but like the is algorithm supported with composite MLDSA algorithm might be sufficient, but then people might not know which one to pass in if they want to just know in general if composite MLDSA is supported. The alternative is they can check is supported, but then they wouldn't know which exact one is supported. So
I mean, I see them as having distinct value, and I would understand how to call them, or when I would want each one. Uh, how do the others feel of the two similar names? One being a big, basically supports any, and then the other being supports specific. All right then. I guess
yeah, I think we
from a practical standpoint, Pranav, is supported always going to be the same true as MLDSA is supported?
yeah. So
So-
this is supported in every case that MLDSA is supported, and it's not supported in any case that MLDSA is not.
Yeah, unless we got some weird platform that supported native composites without native MLDSA, but aside from Apple, who would do that? So yeah,
Yeah.
I think they're both fine. If we wanted to cut one, I'd cut the any because you can kind of fish for it elsewhere. But
Yeah,
if nobody else is saying cut it, we'll leave it in.
sounds good. Okay, then the next, so these are digital signature algorithms, so they have signed and verified, and they basically will call the MLDSA sign and then the traditional sign. It's an implementation detail, but that's what they do internally. So the signatures for these methods are signed data, which will give, yeah, given data, it'll in a context, it'll assign it. And then both of them, the byte array overload and read-only span overload call into the core method, which is abstract and implemented by whichever providers want to implement it. So signatures have variable length, but we know there's an upper bound for them. So the abstract method here is sign data core, which will take a data which is expected to be the exact length that you will, or uh, it'll be enough length to fit the signature in all cases. So whichever derived class implements it will be guaranteed that. So that's why this isn't try sign data, it's sign data, and then you return the int saying how much of that buffer that we passed in did you use. Um, and yeah, and then verify.
And for
We'll
the
verify that. Yeah.
span writing one, our current plan is you have to pass a destination that's big enough, right? We're not
Yeah.
we're not going to
Yeah.
do because we don't have a try, so we're not doing the overrent and underwrite.
Yeah. So sign data will always give you correctly a buffer that is max signature length.
No, but I mean this parameter, if it's smaller than max length, we're going to throw.
Um.
We're not going to ask did it fit before we throw. We're going to say you need to give me a guaranteed big enough buffer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That is an option we could change, but we do expose max signature length, so the user should know that to use that. Whether it's discoverable, maybe not. I don't know.
No, I mean I think it's fine to throw of you have to give me max instead of we do a bunch of work and then find that it wasn't enough. The only reason that we would not throw is if we also had the try.
Yeah, so one of the things that was kind of leading me to this is signatures are non-deterministic in some cases. Specifically in ECDSA, the signature is non-deterministic. You can get different signatures each time you sign it. And so you won't really know the length of it. Whereas for like keys, you can reasonably say the key will always be the same size. So signatures, it to me didn't make sense to for someone to say, I know beforehand that this signature is going to be shorter than the max signature length, and then pass like a shorter buffer. That doesn't really seem like a scenario that makes sense. So that's why here I kind of put just always you have to always pass the max signature length because you don't have any special knowledge that says that the signature will be any less than that max signature length. Cool. And then verify data will just verify the signature. It's not going to throw anything when the signature is the wrong length. It'll just return false. Yeah. All right.
Okay. And then
So
these all look the same as we've done on the other algorithms. We're here. The name is Composite ML-DSA private key and Composite ML-DSA public key. Is there anything special in this block?
yeah, so the exports are going to be special because they're different in that the sizes of the keys are not exact for PQC. Um, so uh, for the traditional algorithm, I mean, so for the previous APIs, all the MLDSA algorithms had an exact key size based on the algorithm. But now for exporting, we for ECDSA, it doesn't have an exact, and RSA, there's some of the cases it doesn't have exact key sizes. So the user might not know the exact size buffer to provide. So now we need to provide a way to get out variable length signatures. So the way this is proposed for try export is you pass in a destination buffer. If it's long enough, we'll fill it and return it back, will return true. And if it's not long enough, we'll return false. But there are some alternate proposals at the bottom of this spec, which have like a max key length and max for both the private and the public key. And we would require users to provide a sufficiently long buffer when they try to export. So that is kind of an open question of whether we should do that or not. Can kind of go into the internal details of it, but briefly, uh, RSA is not bounded in theory, but in all practical applications and like the FIPS standard, they put a limit on each of the parameters. So in practice, there is an upper bound for all of them. And so we can say, this is the upper bound. You need to always provide that upper bound size destination. So there's no chance of it failing to export.
When you say we can say that, is there like an API that we're going to provide that gives you the upper bound, or are you
Yeah,
supposed to
so
know that?
if you scroll down, Jeremy, on this, there's yeah, so here the alternative design, there's two options that we can consider. One is exposing them as properties on the algorithm for max private key size and max public key size, which will be that size, the size of the buffer that you would need to provide. And there's two levels where we can expose this. One is the public methods, which the users will call, they need to provide the correctly sized buffer, or we can put it at the level of the abstract methods, which are not exposed to the public, but are exposed to the derived classes, which, I mean, they could be public, but the derived classes will always be guaranteed a buffer that will be large enough. And in that case, we may or may not need to expose them as properties on the algorithm. So, yeah. The downside of this is just that these buffers, the max size might be like way larger than you need. Maybe not way larger, but might be just larger than you need. And since you imported and exported the key beforehand, you might know that the key is like this exact length. And when you call the method, if you pass that exact length to the method, um, should it throw because it's not the max length, but it's the length that you know it to be or not? So I'm kind of thinking that it would make sense to put this on maybe just the abstract methods so that we don't like throw when someone passes in a short buffer. We might not be efficient, like we'll still allocate the like a larger buffer internally, but it'll still be permissible to the user to give us shorter buffer.
Yeah, on the one hand, the API designer in me likes the flexibility of the try. On the other hand, having written, like the conformance tests of how the protected works, once we start having the try, now we have the what if the derived type returns stupid links that don't match the Boolean return that it gave, and what do we do about that in our tests? Do we care? Do we trap the answers on the way out? So I think I like the core method where we say we're going to give you a big enough buffer, and if we get it wrong, we fix it in the next version. I don't think that makes sense to require on the part of the caller. So this would be a case where we just rent a temporary big enough buffer if they give us something that's too small.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and the question is whether we need these. The other question, I guess, is whether we need these properties on the algorithm. I think not. I don't think we need it. Implementers can just assume it, or if they have a better notion of like, this is not long enough, then actually they can't do anything about that because we'll always provide the same length buffer. Or actually, if the user provides a bigger length buffer, then we'll pass that over to the underlying method. So yeah, I guess it'll have to bubble up to the user as an exception to retry again.
I hear my rent-if method being used.
Yeah,
Um,
but then yeah, in that case, it'd be nice to for it to be a try, but still, I guess it is still a try, right? In the second case, the public method is a try. So yeah,
yeah, and I mean, we can also expose the int returning one for the like the public can have both the try and the int returning. That's fine. One throws, the other returns false. In fact, the int one just calls the try and returns false, or throws if it returns false.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I don't. Given that these are the max sizes are probably us being opinionated instead of the spec.
yeah.
I I think it's fine to cut them because the technically the user could act on them by guaranteeing that they're a big enough buffer, but I don't really see it coming up. Um,
Yeah, if we're
if somebody asks, we can add it, but
yeah.
less is more.
Yeah, then the other caveat here is that the pairings right now, the 18 different pairings are right now as of the spec, there are 18, maybe there'll be more. But the only variation here is for ECDSA, only named curves are currently used, and like we're filtering to that. Uh, but as far as I understand, if you have your own curves, you could have longer parameters, and I'm not sure if those could be unbounded, but I'm assuming like all the specs will put a bound on those. Um, just to make sure, just thinking out loud to make sure that like having a max private key and max public key, even if it's internal, makes sense. Um, I think for even explicit curves, there should be like a theoretical upper bound for those, or a practical upper bound, not theoretical.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're also experimental. We won't always
Yep.
be, but I don't expect it ever to get unconstrained, which means we would always know the answers.
Yep. Cool.
Okay, so back up to here.
Yep. So the rest are very similar to the existing methods we approve for SLHDSA and MLDSA. Export. Oh, so one thing that we skipped over, sign does not have a pre-hash or anything. Composite ML-DSA doesn't have that mode, so we don't need to worry about that. Okay, so export, import, all of these are the same. I think we could just kind of skip these. I don't know if there's anything interesting besides the fact that we're using private key here already, so we don't need to worry about secret key. That's not even relevant here, so yeah. And then composite ML-DSA algorithm, this is very similar to the existing ones, but these encode the pairing. The pairing is left as like an internal detail, but it kind of leaks out in this algorithm layer that shows which two algorithms are paired. And one thing that is included in this is the hash algorithm when signing. None of that really needs to be exposed to the user. So it's just the name, and similar to all the previous ones, it implements equatable.
Okay, and for people whose eyes have glossed over, especially on these really long names, they're all named. The MLDSA algorithm value, for example, MLDSA 44, then the word with, and then something else on the right. With RSA being capitalized because it's significantly related to our RSA type. Though I don't think actually think it actually takes one because that's an implementation detail. So we could case it
Yeah,
either way,
yeah.
but
Yeah, I mean, there's also the ED DSA types, which we don't support either. So
but
I
they're
think there's an
approved.
argument for. Oh, they are.
Yeah,
Okay.
but we don't have two platforms, so we're not doing it.
Okay.
As soon as Apple writes it correctly, or any other platform adds support for it, then we'll add it to .NET. But Apple wrote it wrong. They did not follow the spec.
Yeah, I guess the other interesting part is the max signature size. That's the only, previously there was exact signatures, but we already mentioned that. Yeah. All right. And then the next thing is the CNG algorithm. So Windows does not implement this yet. Right now, the implementation we're going with in Box is a managed one, which will manually go and instantiate the PQC algorithm and the traditional algorithm. But the idea is that eventually providers will support this natively. So Windows will support it via CNG, and then OpenSSL may or may not support it the same way they did do for the other algorithms that they support. So we want the CNG type here because in the future, if it's in the middle of the release and Windows releases this and someone wants to consume it, we would like to have these types in box already. We would still need to wire it through, so we'd still need to service the implementation, but they would have the APIs and consumers will be able to call it without any change of the APIs. Like on their side, they just need to, I'm assuming, just recompile the code and then it will work. So yeah, so for that purpose, we have the CNG type, which looks very similar to ML-DSA and SLH-DSA. You're given a handle for the CNG key, which is the native wrapper, wrap around the native handle, and the get key, which duplicates that handle and gives it back to you. And yeah, the rest are similar, but again, the question, none of these again would be supported in .NET 10 at release. Certificates are not supported on Windows for Composite ML-DSA yet, but these are kind of future proofing for the servicing that we expect to do. The shapes of these are the same as ML-DSA and SLH-DSA. So we expect them to be correct, at least, even if they don't have an implementation today. And then, yeah, the last one is CMS Signer, which this one is, there's this, previously it was in the spec, now it's going to be a separate spec, but yeah, this is also expected to be part of the Composite ML-DSA is going to be participating in CMS as well, so we had the overload for that. I think that's all of it. There's one about whether we want to support OpenSSL out of the box for the same reasoning as CNG. I'm not sure if there's any use cases for that. I'm not even sure what the OpenSSL implementation is going to look like, if they're going to do like external providers or whatnot. Yeah. So,
I mean, I think so. The platform hope, of course, is that nobody ever touches the interop types, and then once they are touching the interop types, I'm going to hand wave and say it's 100 to 1 that people use the Windows interop over the OpenSSL interop, because too many things in Windows need to ask what's the name of this key, and in OpenSSL it's usually you're just trusting .NET to do what you're doing and you're not actually interoping with the system. So I think it's fine to leave the OpenSSL one out until we have one. The concern here is really about the net standard type projections, and we'll just leave it out on net standard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, net standard. Yeah. And standard won't have OpenSSL or CNG stuff. So
Right. It won't declare the type Composite ML-DSA OpenSSL, so you can't use that as an exchange type from a net standard assembly. Oh darn.
yeah. I think that's pretty much it.
Okay. And then chat's asking, is there an export public key PIM? The specific format called Composite ML-DSA public key does not have a PIM defined format. The PIM defined format would be subject public key info PIM.
There was actually one overload. I think it was for, was it signing, where we have a byte array returning one, but we don't have a read-only span. Yeah, actually, this is consistent with MLDSA. Others, I think so.
Yeah, shouldn't there be a one that's span in and bytes out?
I would, that would be a nice one to have. But I don't think we have it for the other ones.
I feel like we do. Oh, we can add it here to the approval, and we can leave it out if it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, MLDSA only has one byte array returning.
Well, then maybe we'll be back next week with one more thing.
Yeah, I mean, in practice, I don't know how useful it is because I feel like you would always want a destination. With some of the stuff here now, with like the max destination, maybe handling that could be a thing. Who knows?
Yeah, and it is, as long since it's based on the max, it is easy enough to write as an extension method if you care.
Yeah.
All right, so the notes that I have are instead of a try export, which is more consistent with RSA and ECDSA, we're going to stick with the PQC defined export, and we're just going to understand what a big enough buffer is, and if we're wrong, we'll update it in servicing and give a bigger buffer the next time.
Yeah.
And then we'll have both the give me the byte array and an int returning span writing one and the try. And by both I meant three things.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so the int return the try export would have to do like a try catch around the core, but yeah.
no, I mean, if it's passing a guaranteed big enough buffer, the question is, was your passed buffer bigger than the core returned?
Yeah, well, also the core could say, like, if it's some provider which is exotic and it says your destination is not big enough or something,
Well, yeah, that's
could
gonna
also
fail,
happen.
but
Yeah.
that's what we
Well,
have cryptographic error or cryptographic exception for.
Well, in the yeah, it's an implementation detail, yeah, for sure. But historically, I guess try would indicate if the buffer is too short, we should return false. But in this case, it is kind of an error that you're not following the spec that allows you to, have these really large keys.
Okay, and we said no to adding these properties until the need is proven.
Yep.
And yeah. Oh, and look. While I copy and paste, everyone can be amused that rule E was about E. Too late. Alright, I added the other signed data. We'll just make sure that we're consistent with everything as we wrap up, and change the export patterns.
Yeah, looks good.
Alright. Thank you, Pranav.
Thanks.
All right. .NET Runtime 115664. System client model. Add support for proxy reader and writer.
Yeah, so the motivation here is that sometimes we have clients that inherit from one of our SDKs, and they don't own the models, but they want to change the structure of how that is written. Another use case is they want to actually add additional formats that can be written. So in the Aspire case, we are writing our management plane models out as bicep, and they don't have that serialization defined on them. So this proxy allows us to inject that format so that the models that you don't control can follow the specific behavior that you want to override. So the model reader writer options class now has a method to add a proxy, and the proxy is just a dictionary of types to ipersistibles. And there are a couple methods that allow you to pull the proxy out and resolve whether or not a proxy was added to the options class. And then the proxy model object is, during writing, you need to have the data that should be written out. And so we smuggle the instance of the object being written through the proxy model property there. So it's pretty straightforward from an API perspective. That's pretty much it.
What is the difference between get proxy and resolve proxy?
So resolve proxy is allows you to pass in the existing persistable, and you're either going to get back that same persistable or the proxy that was registered on the options, either one. So either way, you get back something that you know you can immediately use. Try get is if you want to just see if a proxy was registered and get that out, and then make your own choice as to which one you want to use.
Fair enough. I assume this is based on the extensions options patterns. So, Stefan, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Extensions options? What do you mean by that?
The Microsoft extensions packages and conventions thereof.
No, this is all in system client model.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I haven't been giving this my full focused attention, but yeah, this doesn't seem related.
Okay. Well, usually these days when we see a thing that ends in the word options, it's using patterns from Microsoft extensions.
Got it. No, this is the options class that you can pass into the model reader writer to tell it what format you want, whether you want JSON or XML or whatever other format you've defined. We're just adding to that options class so that you can inject a proxy to have a bit more control for types that you don't own.
Fair enough. So on the one hand, the object type of proxied model feels weak. I guess, by definition it is. But the only way that I can think of to solve that means we have to make derived types of model reader writer options of T. So it's probably the best we're going to get. Does passing this options type into a reader or writer cause any of these properties to appear late, or do only the public methods on it cause proxy model to start having an answer?
Proxy model is when you say appear late.
It's get only, so the user didn't specify
Yeah.
it. So
Right.
so when does it get set?
It gets set by the model reader writer as it traverses the object tree, and so it'll always hold the current thing being written.
And then once it's set, does that lock out any of these other methods, or like does that lock out add proxy?
All of the add proxy, once you pass it into model reader writer, add proxy is never going to be called again.
By is never going to be called again, you mean will throw, or just it makes no sense and we don't care what it does?
That's a good question. I don't think we implemented it so that it throws. Like, I don't think we have a bit that says this is now locked and add throws because the bit is set. You're inside the internal code of model reader writer at that point, so there's really no way. I guess you could hold on a reference and add it in. Maybe we should add it.
Because my concern here is if somebody currently is doing things where they're passing the same set of options to a reader and a writer, if that makes sense.
Sure.
That they'll have passed it to the reader and then either think that it's a read-only structure and the reader read what it needed out of it and moved on, and now they're going to call add proxy and call the writer, and then it's going to be like, I already know what my proxy is, so go away. So it's how does this interact when you pass the same object into multiple things? Are they going to lock each other out? Are they going to interfere?
Great
Don't
question.
do that.
I should have specified. So what happens is once you go inside the model reader writer call, we clone the options. And so you messing with your instance that you gave us does nothing. We have a frozen instance inside.
Okay, so a caller will never see proxied model be not null.
Correct.
And so it must have a set. Is it internal set?
Yes.
So are the readers and writers not expected to be able to be written as types outside your assembly? Or are they going to have to call a base method on the reader or writer type to get the proxy to lock?
So if you are a top level object that is writing a child object in an assembly you don't own, you will call model reader writer write on that object and pass the current instance of UTF-8 JSON writer to it, or XML writer, or whatever format you're doing. And that callback into the internal code allows it to set the current object for a proxied model. So externally, you never have to do it. You just have to call back into model reader writer for each of the child objects so that orchestration happens. Okay.
But then the reader or writer has like a protected copy of the options that'll now have to set so the derived type could see it.
The options that are passed into the top level object would be the frozen instance, and when that frozen instance comes back through, the copy is not recreated. So it recognizes that this is the instance I owned, and it won't recreate that on each callback in.
Okay. I mean, really, just making sure that you have a model that works outside your assembly, because I assume that this is supposed to work across assembly. So just with a non-public set, it's making sure that has a story.
Yeah, the entire purpose of this is to be able to work outside of an assembly. So the models that you're wanting to override are ones that you don't own and they belong to some other assembly. So yeah, that's part of this.
Okay. And then everybody knows what T proxied model should be using. Right. Every type that would ever see it not null, they would really be asking, is the proxied model a JSON model of elephant or whatever, because they know they're in the elephant context already.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. So, yeah, if this is never going to come back to the user, it's only for derived types, and derived types are expected to be context aware, then the object property and not being generic seems better to me.
Should it be like set proxy? Because add proxy seems to be like you can add multiple things and it would be supported.
You can add multiple proxies. So, I mean, you could have like 6 different types that
Okay.
you're proxying in one option.
Oh, I see.
Set is interesting though, because if you add twice for the same T, the second one overrides. So that maybe set is more appropriate because or add should throw if you add a second one. I'd probably go with set and just have it be idempotent, or not idempotent, but overriding and calling set. You just know that the last call is going to be the value that is stored.
Well, so if you add multiple proxies, what is the proxied model value?
As the object graph is traversed, it gets updated with the current object being written. So it'll never be 2 things at once, but it will bounce between them depending on the object hierarchy.
Yeah, then maybe add might be fine.
Well, the question is, what's it doing when you pass the same T twice?
Yeah, I think set is a bit more explicit on what is happening if you set twice.
Yeah, I mean, because it is slightly better. So set makes sense if the key was a separate property, because then you're saying it's you're having the dictionary set behavior of key versus the dictionary add behavior of a key. But since the key is itself the T, I'm probably fine with just putting it in docs that it's add with overwrite behavior, because otherwise it would look weird if you're like, oh, options set proxy foo, semicolon, options set proxy foo, or sorry, set proxy bar, and you're like, well, you can delete that first line. It's like, no, they're different types. So
That's fair.
So the add, which is overwriting if you specified the same T, probably makes the code easier to understand when you're reading it. Unless we had a language feature which is no inference on this generic, but then we'd have endless debates on where we would apply that attribute. All right, this is system client model primitives. Okay, so the expected use would be you're going to build one options, you're going to call add proxy for all the various types in your hierarchy that might need to be proxied. Then you're going to pass it to a thing, and as it hits all the subtypes, each one's going to get a different clone of that has a different resolved proxy model property. Right? Answering the why is the property a single value. So each type layer would get a different answer.
Yeah, small change to that. So only one clone is created for the top level, and that clone is passed to all subsequent objects in the hierarchy. But that's a clone we own, and no one will be modifying the add at that point.
Well, so if you do have a complex model type,
yep,
as the thing that does the original cloning, if it's handing this same resolved options off to subtypes, then now won't they be surprised because they would expect proxy model to be a persistible model of elephant, but they got a persistible model of zoo?
Each callback through the model reader right elephant, model reader right zoo will set the proxied model. So
so the
there
clone
won't
doesn't have a
be-
single proxied model. Basically, the layering is going to be like, set it to the thing that we're resolved to go call the person. Now we've
exactly.
popped another layer. Set it to the thing that they need and go call the person. Okay.
Exactly.
And presumably in your clone, like if they call add proxy or something, which hopefully they don't, like that would throw.
I actually think that's a good thing to have in there. I can't remember if that was the current implementation, but I'll make a note to do that. We do mark it as a frozen instance, so it makes perfect sense that add should just throw.
Okay. Does anybody have feelings about proxied model versus model proxy versus gray elephant?
So it's literally like in this example, it's going to be an instance of output model proxy, like for the top level call, or
Yep.
I don't know. I think it's fine. I like either. Probably slight preference for model proxy, but maybe that's just because I see output model proxy in the API usage.
The reason we went with proxied model is because the instance on proxied model. I think I answered your question wrong, Stephen. The instance.
Stefan, by the way.
Oh, Stefan, sorry.
No worries.
The other one's Steven.
Yeah.
The instance of proxied model will be the model itself that's being proxied.
Okay. I think on the current name. Okay. Okay, yeah, I
Gotcha.
like the current name, I think. Then. Like the model with the proxies applied.
Okay. So I don't think we changed anything, which does happen.
Just a note on the frozen bit throwing on an add call. I think that was the only thing I have listed as notes.
Yep. So we discussed add proxy versus set and decided add was better with a dot comment. But the add should throw with a frozen copy of the options, and we discussed the proxied model name and decided the current name is good enough and maybe technically better. So those are my notes. Anyone have anything else to say?
I'm back.
All right. Sounds like that means it gets the we didn't change anything note. Boop. All right. Thank you, Michael.
All right, thank you.
And while there are two other things with assigned version numbers, they both depend on people who are not available today. So, in the spirit of let's get things ready for RC1, I think we're going to go ahead and adjourn there.
If you have 1 minute.
Okay.
Hi. I came back with some additional information on the extension marker attributes. In chat, we continued some discussion. Basically, the three options that were discussed so far are the original string proposal, system.type as an integer, system.type, and then typedef as an int. So at this point, I still recommend the original string proposal. Basically, what I confirmed is that data that we put in attributes is going to be reused. It's stored in the blob heap. The attributes point to the blob heap, and there's sharing that occurs. So in terms of bloat, I think we're not too concerned. Stephen was saying the main advantage of using type would be a minor usability benefit, which I don't think is too significant, where I don't expect people to be, basically we're trying to hide those extension metadata from reflection as much as we could with special name and unspeakable names. So I just want to circle back to see if we can revise the earlier decision that we prefer type to say, no, actually, we're okay with string. So is that appropriate?
Yeah, I mean, the answer we exited with was we think the attribute itself should be renamed, but either of the shapes, sure, whichever one makes more sense for the compiler. So
okay, all right.
So yeah, it doesn't sound like anybody wants to super argue. Do you have the issue number?
Sorry, 118179.
So I can remove confusion and remove the or.
Awesome. Thank you very much. But that was interesting, good feedback, and it was good to double check those alternatives. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. And with that addendum, unless anybody else has anything else. All right. Thanks for being very chatty, chat, and we appreciate your input. And we will see you all next week. Same .NET time, same .NET channel. Until then, I don't know. Ciao. I couldn't think of goodbye in French. Au revoir. Until then, au revoir.
There you go.